Welcome to episode 89 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live from Microsoft Ignite 2018. This is a show about Office 365, Azure, and the IT Pro and end user side of life, where we discuss a topic or recent news related to Office 365 or Azure and how it relates to you as an IT Pro. In this episode, Scott continues to run around Ignite doing interviews, and in this one catches up with Jeremy Winter to talk about Azure Migrate. Enjoy the interview.
Scott Hogue here at Microsoft Ignite with Jeremy Winter. He is a director of Azure Management and all things Azure migration. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that tonight. Can you go ahead and just tell people about your background a little bit, Jeremy?
Yeah. I've been at Microsoft for quite a few years. I'd say over 20 years. And had a variety of different roles. Started as a developer. I later switched and ran big services from an operations point of view, like Hotmail and Passport, Live ID, and then switched over and have done product development. So you're seeing me over and doing things like System Center, and then over the course of the last few years, really taking those new innovations we want to do with management for the cloud and from the cloud, and really brought that native into Azure.
Awesome. I used to be a developer in a past life too, so I understand how it goes. Yeah. And going ahead and running through that. So I thought it'd be super great, since you've got kind of the background for it and own a little bit of it, to talk about Azure Migrate and what's been going on there, and helping customers and consumers of the cloud understand how to bring their workloads over in a way that makes them not only, hey, let's get them over to the other side, but they're still secure, they're compliant, we can operate them, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so when I think about migration, it's definitely up on the front of everyone's minds at this point. You can see everyone's really embracing the cloud and kind of driving through those core components. When we think about those main triggers that are happening with migration, we just see whether it's people wanting to just lift and shift and get into the cloud, wanting to start to remove or get out of the contracts they are with their data centers, or start to just refresh with a new modern architecture using the cloud. We see a variety of different triggers that seem to be in the primary of the conversation. And so for us, when we start to think about these different triggers, we also want to make sure that we give you the tool sets, or the customers the tool sets, depending on what that trigger is. You see at the show, we've been talking a lot about the 2008 end of support coming up.
It's a little bit of a thing that's kind of hanging over your heads and customers as well.
Yeah. So that's been one of those triggers. And so we've really been on the engineering side, making sure that however you decide, or whatever your trigger is to get to the cloud, that we're there to really make sure we have the tool sets and the partners there to help get customers to the cloud as quickly as possible.
When it comes to email, Outlook and Office 365 are fantastic, but sometimes there are things you'd like to do that aren't implemented. Sperry Software creates Outlook add-ins and Office 365 services that fill in these gaps. For instance, there are Outlook add-ins to automatically print emails and/or attachments, save emails to PDF, send out recurring emails, or how about a warning when you're going to do a reply to all instead of a normal reply? Find these and many more email productivity solutions. Get started today by visiting www.sperrysoftware.com/cloudit.
Very cool. So you've had some great announcements around 2008 and end of support, and ways that customers can extend support by going to Azure. And one of the things I always run into with my customers is not necessarily the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of going to the cloud and understanding security. And I'm always telling them, it's just another premises for you. My prem, your prem, their prem, it doesn't matter. It's another prem. We can privatize connectivity, especially for IaaS. That's not the end of the world. And we can get your workloads over. Well, what about this migration thing that sits on the internet? Doesn't have to. We just have to put this other tooling in place, right? We got to go read the manual and and consume the docs and run it down. So can you bring everybody up to speed on what's going on with 2008 end of support on-prem, and what happens if they bring those workloads to Azure?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Definitely the 2008 support is coming up here in the next 9 months. And so we've made sure that all of our tooling, whether it's from the database or the server, supports 2008 and R2, 32-bit or 64-bit to make sure, and that's key, to make sure that you've got all the coverage to move that onto Azure. The unique piece that we're doing here for this is to ensure that any of those customers that do move onto Azure will give you support, what you typically pay for additional support for those security support and such.
For extended fix and extended life.
Yeah, we just give that to you at no charge on Azure.
Yep, and it's interesting to have 32-bit in there as well. We're not talking about bringing a 32-bit workload over and magically transitioning it to 64 along the way.
It's support.
It's support for 32 legacy in Azure, which is something, typically... no, don't do it.
Yeah. We really wanted to make sure that we had an answer for the customers that maybe, really needed to get those operating systems out of their environment. Go ahead and modernize with us on Azure, and we'll make it real simple for you.
Cool. So they can modernize along the way. They can bring their existing licensing over, make use of hub or hybrid use, adopt reserved instances, and see substantial savings, if anything, just from not paying for the downstream support that happens to come into that.
Yeah, it's substantial on the savings front, for sure. Sure.
And does Azure Migrate have that built into the assessments today? So if a customer goes into their VMware environment and they say, I'd really like to just run down that 2008 workload.
Yeah, it does. So your key piece when you think about, you kind of just brought up one of the core tools that we have that's out there, Azure Migrate.
It's almost like I've touched it before.
Yeah. And so Azure Migrate, it does the assessments. As you know, it goes out in the environment. VMware was where we started. We just announced it also does Hyper-V now. So at the show does Hyper-V.
And that'll be by end of calendar year for customers, correct?
Just to set that view of where we're headed on it. And that allows you now to take your VMware or your Hyper-V environment and do that assessment. As a part of the assessment, after we've discovered and assessed, we'll also go take those same cost savings that we do and use that as part of the calculations. So you can choose in the tool whether you want to add your hybrid use benefit or not, but it'll allow you to get to that level of granularity.
Honestly, that's one of the coolest things about that service is that it understands your subscription and your run book and your run rate, against whatever agreement you're on, because it's quite often hard to teach people pricing for the cloud. And here, go to the public calculator and then magically translate it with this other spreadsheet that I'm going to give you from the back end from your EA. And it's one of those unique things. And Azure Migrate as a service is effectively free for assessment to be able to go ahead and run that up and get everything in place.
Yeah, Scott, all our migration tools, we wanted to make sure that they were free and available for customers to go use. And I think that's core where we see Azure Migrate is that center of gravity that we'll go put together and keep our investments headed that direction for the customers.
So for Hyper-V assessments, is that going to work pretty similar to the way VMware does today? Download an appliance, spin up the appliance, telemetry goes to the cloud, and then you just kind of go ahead and
seems to be
a
simple approach that's working for lots and lots of our customers. So we're just it's non-intrusive, it's quick. You're able to pull from that existing data you already have in your environment. So we're going to keep going down that path.
Yeah.
And then if there's areas where people want a little nuances or little different aspects of that, then we've got a great set of partners that we work with to go do that. And that's a key part of our team's investment strategies is to empower and enable those partners.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about this service or kind of the offering, the way it's laid out, where we think about assessment and then migration as a different phase, and then actually operationalizing a workload and keeping it up and secure and lights on and all those good kinds of things. There's different steps and different consumption patterns within there. So you might go to a third party today and maybe you already have that relationship and they already do migration assessments. Awesome, run it, go with it. Or maybe run both and see which one kind of comes up for you and which one's going to be better along the way. Yeah,
and Scott, you've seen some of our partnerships do that already where they're using it for their discovery and assessment, and they've integrated natively with site recovery to go bring site recovery into their tool sets so that they have a way to quickly get onto Azure. And I think you'll see us do more of that integration with our partners, just giving that choice. And I'd expect you'll see us take even Azure Migrate and start to bring those level of connections in for our partners. So you have the choice just natively in.
Yeah, just let them integrate with the APIs and bring that in from that set.
Mover is a cloud migration company that specializes in moving your company's files from file servers or cloud storage like Box, Dropbox, and Google into Office 365. Their patented technology makes Mover the fastest OneDrive file migrator in the world. Moving dozens of terabytes of data a day is a breeze. Use Mover's free, industry-leading migration guides, or ask for a managed migration and they'll take the lead. With Mover, all your data is secure and intact. Running completely behind the scenes, you don't lose time, money, or hair while you transfer. Scan, plan, migrate, report. Migrations that don't suck with Mover. Visit mover.io for more info.
So Migrate's pretty good at covering virtual machine migrations or kind of true lift and shift. Or we can go to ASR and we can do the P2V thing and bring it up maybe without the assessment along the way. But there's other workloads or other things we might want to transform along the way. So IaaS commodity service tends to be the most expensive thing. So you know, as customers have opportunities to bring things down, thinking about like SQL workloads and bringing those over.
Yeah, we had a big ask on the SQL workloads because you have site recovery, and we continue to have that, which is an easy way to fail over or use kind of that live real-time ability to bring over your workloads onto Azure. But the database was one of those key areas that we invested in, and it's one of those areas that we announced at the, as we announced over the course, we're really pushing at the show and announced is the ability to do database migration service. And so that allows you to do your SQL to SQL on Azure. Mm-hmm. But we also announced we have previews of some of the other technologies like MySQL to the Azure MySQL service. And so we'll just continue to move down the path of making sure whatever your database or whatever your data solution is, we'll either help get it into Azure on Azure SQL, or one of our hosted services like the MySQL for Azure, or even Cosmos. And so we'll really try to help get those database solutions onto Azure. So that's one of the big announcements we did at the show, is making sure that we talked through both the database migration service and where we're headed with that.
Yeah, so customers have access to DMS or database migration service, and then DMA as well if they kind of want to go down their own path and maybe change a schema along the way or see what's going or make the move from on-prem SQL to Azure SQL or
that's right.
some type of support that's kind of not there today, or they can go into managed instance.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to flag for you as well, is definitely, I think from the platform perspective, just as we've done on the server itself, as we think about how to, example, add more Tomcat and other aspects into it so that we can support those Java apps and Linux workloads. It also, when you think about the database side, in addition, we announced the managed instance, and that's just really the opportunity for customers to take those databases, move them on to our managed instance offer, and they don't have to worry about running it. They can just focus on the core of the database themselves without all the other stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, and I think the important thing there for everyone is there's Azure SQL, which is not 100% compatible with on-prem Microsoft SQL Server, and then there's managed instance, which is Microsoft will run a SQL Server for you as a service, and you never have to worry about it again, but it is effectively SQL as you know it, love it, and supports all those features. Features all up along the way. You had some interesting things with database sizing as well, and being able to support larger scale workloads within the SQL tiers.
Yeah. So on the sizing, the tool clearly is going to have sizing offers for you when you go through and do the assessment of those. It also has a capability where we have hyperscale, which is an offer where you don't have to worry so much about the database itself and the storage. Oftentimes when you're thinking about the logs and the information, you're worried about them filling up. And so here, you just can rely on us and the hyperscale capabilities of Azure, and we'll go scale as your database grows with you. Yeah,
and I've seen customers that have multiple hundreds of terabyte databases across many instances, or even in single instances sometimes. So it's good to be able to have that over there for them and let them come across to that service.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Some of the other migration pillars. So there's tooling like Azure Migrate, where we can assess and potentially use ASR or a third party, like whatever works. Like you said, there's tons of partners out there. Most of those, if not all of them, do online transfers to move data. So we're talking about on the wire, and we've got I want to collapse a data center. Well, let's spin up a nice big express route circuit for you and get the BGP routes right, and start cranking that stuff up there through process servers along the way. Or if we can suffer a little bit of an outage or some downtime depending on the workload, or we can do some other replication later. SQL. Let's go ahead and take a backup and ship it. So last year, we had Databox come out. And interesting little product, 8U, and go ahead and throw it in, a little bit of fiber channel and we're rocked up. But that had some limitations in size at the time. So now you've got some new tiers of data box as well.
Yeah, we have 3 new tiers. Our biggest tier goes to 100 petabyte, and it's a big, heavy box. And so when you think about that overall environment with the data box, our goal is to really be able to have different offers. I call it small, medium, and large, that really allow you to go, when the network is not feasible to transfer data, you can work with us and we'll get those environments out to you and then manage them back or get them into our environment in a secure way.
Yeah, I love what's been going on there with some of the offline transfer stuff. Even some of the announcements about the way disks are going to come over and disk rental as a service is.
I mean, there just has to be a way. Data, there's times it's just not feasible. Whether it's a security view when you're really is thinking about it from that perspective, or the network, or just the delay in the transfer. Sometimes it's just better to get the stuff physically moved over.
Very cool. We can assess and we can migrate, and now we have to manage all that stuff on the other side. So there's been a couple of services. Azure Cost Management was kind of the acquisition and bringing that in. A lot of that data has been backfilling into the Azure portal proper. It's still a little bit of a bifurcated experience, but kind of slowly but surely coming into play there. So customers do have the opportunity to go through and figure out, oh, I migrated that. Do I want to look at RIs and potentially have more flexibility? Because even there's some new stuff.
Yeah, and the cost optimization, Scott, that's definitely, as you talk about it, we did the acquisition last year, which brought, our cloud, really a pretty comprehensive cost management solution. And now you're seeing us start to bring that in. And this is really, we had a choice. Do you keep it in market, or you pull it out and have it disappear for the next year and then unfold? And so we kept it in market for people. And now you're seeing it at this round at Ignite. We're bringing in Azure Cost Management, all those capabilities that we had from that partnership. They're really starting to go, help bootstrap that area. So the core areas of it are for, we're starting it out with our EA customers and then moving it out to the direct. But the core is we're making sure cost management is available, deep, even clear down to budgeting that you need to be able to do, optimizations with the analysis, all at no charge for those customers on Azure.
Yeah, as long as they're running in an Azure workload, they're all good and ready to go.
And I think that really helps when you're starting. You've assessed, you've optimized as you've moved. Now it also gives you visibility on the real time how it's looking as you start to grow in your environment and set those kind of boundaries in front there.
Yeah, it's something we kind of glossed over, but absolutely the Migrate service, when it does the assessment, it has custom fudge factor built into it, and customers can go in and say, I want to have this much swing in what I'm considering for CPU and RAM, and it will make those assessments and say, you're underutilized over here, so you can go smaller, you can save more money, you can potentially go highly available where you weren't in the past, have more resiliency, better SLA, redundancy, all that good kind of stuff. So customers come over. I know one of the things that was part of that story as well for operations and just running the environments was making sure that default tooling was in place and kind of turned on and ready to go. So I spend a lot of time with my customers even about just, hey, here's Azure Monitor and here's Azure Advisor, and yelling at them all like, hey, here's this thing called Security Center. It's free, as in beer. I understand you might think it's a little limited, but it's free. Like, it didn't cost you anything other than the time it took you to drink a beer and turn it on.
And so that's really, when you think about the management stack, why we bring this together, think through these phases of assess, migrate, you want to optimize, and then we also have the secure and manage aspect to it. You're exactly right. We have the core platform, and when you start to go land workloads into Azure, you need to make sure they're secure. And so we have those core capabilities with Azure Security Center and Advisor, where just by turning it on, we'll give you the recommendations. You use the knowledge that we have to help to set some of those basic recommendations, make sure you can see you're getting the right configurations in place, and we'll just help you get that first round of security in.
Yeah, and I think the thing everybody needs to know, it's not always about upsell or additional consumption. There's recommendations in there of, you're running this too long, or we see that it's not running at the rate, shut it off. Maybe you want to go do scheduled stop start, and it's an Azure automation. It's free. Go ahead and.
So the security side is one aspect to it as well. The other one that we really, we land, as you mentioned, is some of the other ones. Just go get your workloads monitoring. Just go get them monitored. As you bring them onto the environment, it's there, it's native. get the visibility across those workloads. And the same for backup. Just make sure you're using backup on the areas that are specific, the specific ones that you feel you need to get backed up, but let's make sure they're there. And so those have been the 3 ones we've been pushing over the course of the last year. And then we announced this one, we're also seeing this Azure policy and kind of taking us down that path a little bit. This one, we actually built for the existing, how do we help bring in some level of guardrails as you have that speed and agility for the overall usage of the cloud. But as we sat down and started to think about those overall environments, you could see people as they're moving their migration on to the environment, they started to see, like, why aren't I applying policy either to the environments I've moved or set those policies up front as I go through?
Well, it's one of those interesting things. If you were going to sit down, I know during the keynote they talked about a customer going through 9 months of planning and 3 months of implementation. Ideal world, absolutely. We would not even spin up an Azure subscription until we spent 4 to 6 weeks and kind of taking you through cloud foundation and naming standards and policies, and not necessarily like governance for the sake of governance, but practical governance where we can apply to the platform at the user level, platform controls above the users, and just lay it all out there. Like it's a worthwhile exercise to go through t-shirt sizing for VMs because it's going to save you a bunch of money once people start consuming the platform.
Yeah.
Again, it's about having you consume the things you're actually going to use and not be annoyed when, why did I spend $100,000 on a Godzilla thing this month?
Yeah.
And bring that all back. So.
Yeah, and so policy will help you. You have the cost piece of it, but policy will also help you, and that's why we did it. It'll help you as you spin up a new environment with migration. You can just use the basic and just sensible policies that you would put in place. And we also made sure it had the flexibility for not only those workloads that are new coming, but also if you have a bunch of stuff that's already in the environment, start auditing and get it cleaned up and get it to the point that you need it in your compliance views.
Hi, I'm Steve Peshka, and I'm one of the founders at Office365mon.com. I worked at Microsoft for over 18 years, and one of the most common questions I got is, how do I know what's going on with the health of my Office 365 tenant? When there's a problem with your tenant, you need to know what's going on before your users. We help you understand not only when your tenant goes down, but how well it's performing. When you do have a problem, where do you start looking? Is it your network? Is it your tenant? Is it some feature inside of Office 365? Our network analysis features can pinpoint performance issues and help you figure out where those bottlenecks are. Sign up for a free 90-day trial today at Office365mon.com. Stay in the know and stay in control with Office365mon.com.
Cool. So one of the things it threw me off a little bit because I was familiar with it by the old terms was blueprints. And
there's another blueprint.
There's another blueprint. Yeah, naming things is hard. I totally get it. So walk me through the new blueprints announcement, which is not the existing blueprints that people are used to that are out there.
Yeah. So this is a technical. We implemented technology native in ARM. And really, it's a construct that leverages ARM and ARM templates, and then also then brings together the management groups, and then applies policy, which again is connected into Azure Resource Manager. And this is really a blueprint, if you will, of a compilation of these 3 that you want to use in a repeatable way. So
we're talking about kind of a declarative provisioning model for stamping, not infrastructure with environments, but stamping governance around environments.
Right. And you can lay down parts of it. So it's all really based off of the ARM template, but it allows you to go create policies as most people start to use it. But it also allows you to sit down like resource groups. It allows you to define what type of roles that you want to have access to it. You can even use it. We've seen customers start to use it to lay down in certain environments. They always know they want a Cosmos DB and a web app service laid down. So you can lay down those services. It just gives you that flexibility to go work with these different teams, whether you're in migration or you're just working with some of the new teams that are leveraging the cloud, to then go create these blueprints, whether it's your base standard or some custom ones for the environment, and then it's repeatable. So you can easily go just apply it to subscriptions. We're talking minutes, and all those things are set up, and you can rest assured that you have the environment that you need there.
Cool. So subscription management and application of actual policy, organizational policy down to all the constructs that are inside of Azure.
Yeah, and then Scott, when you think about it from a migration point of view, we have seen as we've really been out, as we do more and more of these and more migrations, and as this became visible in some of our preview customers, they started to want to use it and apply it in the migration. And so it's one where it's really simple to go use. It helps you when you're getting over to those your landing machines onto Azure. You can ensure it's got a level enforcement. But again, you can also start to move now and then come back and retrofit as you learn. So it's not something you have to get in the way and go spend another 6 months thinking about it. You can get going. We'll add the default capabilities and policy. Security will give you the default capabilities. And then you can go start to modernize and play with the policies.
Yeah, I think it changes so much that, you're always stuck in the fear of missing out on the next feature. Right. So yeah, don't wait. Like if you're going to think you're going to use blueprints, just go do policy today. Policy is still policy. It's just going to be maybe modeled into the next subscription in a different way, or even the existing one.
Yep.
Same thing with management groups. They've gone GA. Those are all good.
Yeah.
All that stuff's near and dear to my heart. I work for a CSP, good. So we do management at scale, and it's all good stuff for us.
Yeah. Good. Love it.
All right, very cool. Well, I very much appreciate the time today. Anything else that you can think of that people might need to know about?
Scott, I just think have everyone just keep an eye on where we're headed with both additional migration work that we're going to do. We'll do more and more integration in that Azure Migrate. So there's already a few new releases coming down the pipeline already on it. So keep an eye out here in the next 3 to 4 months. We'll have a few more changes coming down that path I think people really like. And then also just know that we're going to continue to push heavy on the governance side.
Awesome. Well, I very much appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.